Hello and welcome to Midwest Writers Room. I'm Luella Schmidt.
And I'm Ken Humphrey.
We are on location today in beautiful Mineral Point, Wisconsin.
In the middle of this fine May afternoon, we're going to be bringing you interviews with booksellers, book publishers, bookstore representatives, and organizers of this actual spring road trip.
That's right. We're here celebrating the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association Spring Road Trip.
So stick with us. There's more to come.
Hello and welcome to the Midwest Writers Room podcast. We are live at the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association conference. We're so excited to be here with Grace Hagan. She's going to tell us a little bit about the event. Why don't we start out with tell us a little bit about the organization itself and how long has it been around?
Absolutely. The organization, the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association, has been around since the early 80s. It was started with the name the Upper Midwest Booksellers Association. And it is one of, right, exactly. One of the reasons it's not that anymore, I think. We are one of several regional trade organizations for independent booksellers in the country. And our work is to connect independent bookstores with publishers. Our work is to do education for our booksellers, develop resources, put on shows like this, which is both educational and filled with author events. So booksellers are getting to talk to and meet authors, and then get their advanced review copies signed and fangirl and fanboy and fan person out with favorite authors. So that, I mean, it certainly makes the books easier to sell and way more compelling. And authors talking about their books is one of the main reasons we do this work. It's just dreamy. And then we have several publishers here as well, representing all the authors. They have all the books coming out in the fall catalog and the winter catalog and spring. So right now they're chatting with the booksellers about what we call rep picks, which are the sales reps saying, these are the books that I want to highlight for your next order. And the booksellers are taking notes and deciding which ones are speaking to them. So this is one of the main things that MIBA does, is connecting booksellers to other people in the industry, creating relationships and networking opportunities. The other thing that we do is kind of hold space for concerns that booksellers have that they want to bring to the publishing industry or to the American Booksellers Association, which is the national independent booksellers trade organization. So all kinds of advocacy and community building. The last thing, we have a program in the spring. That's what we're doing right now. It's called the Spring Road Trip. And we go to different host cities where bookstores pitch for us to come and have the spring road trip there. So we're in Mineral Point now. And that's because the Republic of Letters just did an amazing job inviting us and creating this space. And then we have a fall show, which we do in partnership with the Great Lakes Independent Booksellers Association. That's bigger. The fall shows for all of the industry are just, they're full rooms full of exhibitors, lots more authors, and several more booksellers. So that's one big thing that we do. And then the last thing I wanted to do is, this is another program of ours, the Midwest Indie Bookstore Roadmap. It features all of our bookstore members. It's also an opportunity for people to advertise on one side of it, but the main side is the map, and it's done by artist Kevin Cannon, who's out of the Twin Cities. He creates individual art for every store, whether they're online, brick and mortar, or doing pop-ups. And I think it's something that no other regional does, and we are talking to several of them about how we do it because it's delightful and people love it. We have folks getting in touch with us, book customers, like bookstore customers are who this is for, and asking to buy it so they can send it to their daughter who's going on a road trip this summer and she's a bibliophile and one wants to frame it and she has one from every year. And there's just lovely, it's so charming. And the map itself.
Right, and that's the whole purpose of this is just to set up an actual trip or a vacation or a long voyage. To hit as many of these as you
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Or if all of a sudden you realize that you have to be in South Dakota for something, you can find out what independent bookstores are there. Yeah, it's great. And I think something that the bookstores themselves are very, very happy about. We produce it and ship them to every bookstore. That's part of the membership. They don't pay for that. They get hundreds of them that get given out starting Independent Bookstore Day every year.
So, what are some of the events or the special activities you got going on for this
Mhm.
this 2-day event? Walk us through some of that.
Absolutely. We have panel of Midwest Book Award winners, the Midwest Independent Publishers Association, MIPA, not MIBA, is here, and their awardees from last year came and talked about winning that award and their writing processes and being an author in the Midwest. So that was really special. And we're going to continue to partner with them moving forward and further combine the work that we do, which is great. And they also announced finalists for this coming award season. Those will be announced in June at their gala. So we got to break some news, and that was fun. We have a program later today. We have two keynote authors speaking. One is Jane Hamilton, and she is coming and talking about her book, The Phoebe Variations. And then we have J.R. Dawson, who is talking about The Lighthouse at the Edge of the World. And I want to make sure I got that title right. And JR is also going to be giving a keynote, and they're going to be speaking specifically to the theme that we came up with for this event, this road trip, which is like hope is a practice, hope has a spine. Like booksellers are in kind of a weird space with book bans and libraries getting books taken away and presses being pressure to not carry or produce certain kinds of books. And so it's just and tariffs and lots of questions and unknowns with that. And so we really wanted to lift up like being in community and the resources that we do have and each other, the practices that we have and can share. So JR is going to speak specifically to that with their keynote, which is going to be great. And then I will just say one other highlight today is which is just exemplar of how great the bookselling community is, the indie bookselling community. We do a session called Ideas That Work, and we've got like several categories that we're gonna start with, and then ask booksellers to say like about saving money and generating more income. Like, what idea worked for you? And people throw out things, and we've done this every year. And what's stunning is people share their secrets. It's not competitive. We have bookstores, several in the same cities and towns all over the Midwest, and they work in partnership, in collaboration, as opposed to competition, which is so lovely and different than how we're trained to be in this country, And so it's just the coolest thing to see people connecting, and they'll be sharing documents. Here's my onboarding system, use it. This is why I use this point of sale. Here's a way to get authors to stop by your store, just all of those things. And the booksellers love it, both because they get to share and be shared with. It's really special.
That old phrase, high tide lifts all boats, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And also the community. I mean, that is what you're, a big part of what you're building. Right?
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do, even with the podcast and with the
Yes.
Writers Association,
Yeah.
is that sense of community. And I do think that, that is how the lifting up of each other is how it's done.
Yeah.
That is how most of us behave in the world. And you just have to find your people.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And it makes it more sustainable.
Yes.
It might be contrary to what we're trained around in dominant culture, but it really is what keeps people coming back and why independent bookstores are doing so well, because customers are seeking that out. They're seeking out a place where they feel seen and they feel heard and that to have conversations and just kind of be around the vibe that is there.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
I think what's really missing is kind of that Cheers environment, but in a bookstore.
Exactly.
Like, where everybody knows your name. You
Exactly.
Walk in, you got the smell of the bookstore. And it's kind of this small enclosed space, and you know who's there, and you know where your favorite sections are. And I think that's really a lot of what's missing, right? It's
Yeah.
fine to have a massive store like a Barnes and Noble where you have every book you could want.
Yep.
But it's not the same as going into your local neighborhood
Yep.
bookstore.
Yep. Where people do know your name and you look for the shelf talkers written by the bookseller that you are, simpatico with, and that's the one that you're going to get. And the bookstore I used to work at in St. Louis before I started at MIBA is called Novel Neighbor, and it was amazing to see people come in there once a week to get a book, and you could tell it was part of like their routine and an important thing for them to maintain. And with that said, I think it's also really special to see bookstores recognizing that not everybody can buy a new book, let alone once a week. So our stores, so many of them have programs that make books accessible to all different kinds of people in all different kinds of ways, which is so cool. That recognition, and also being in partnerships with libraries, making suggestions around that, opening up spaces for book clubs. Like, we don't care where you bought the book or if you're borrowing it or whatever, come here. Those kind of things.
One of the trends that
the
I've
same.
seen, you kind of see these little free book drops scattered throughout neighborhoods. It's just like little cubby.
Little
People
free
drop
libraries.
off books. They'll take one from there. They'll drop one off from there. And you see it in big cities, which makes sense. But I've even seen them out. I live out kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And on the way to one of my golf courses, in somebody's yard, they have this little. It looks like an old photo or phone booth.
Yeah.
Stand-up phone booth thing.
Oh,
and look glass door, and you can see the books in there. So I go and I throw my books in there.
Yes, that's
See if anybody ever takes
fantastic.
them. They keep moving to the bottom of the pile. So.
Just put a little shelf talker right in there. Why people should pick that one up.
Absolutely.
We, I don't know if you've walked down the street here in Mineral Point, which is a town of 2,000 people, and there's like 5 just on one block of little free libraries posted up where there's books. And I mention it because we have people from Little Free Library, the national organization, coming tomorrow to talk about being able to partner with bookstores.
Oh, nice.
I know several stores are in relationship with Little Free Library already and will take books that they can't sell for whatever reason, because it's damaged or because they got too many and the publisher just said donate it, any number of reasons, and put those in Little Free Library. So a lot of that continuing to share happens that way too. So fun.
Hey, very good. Anything on the future of this going forward?
Yeah.
I mean, have you created your repeatable template to keep going throughout the years? Or what do you think?
I've been in my position permanently as the executive director for just under 2 months, and have templates that from years past for things like the spring road trip, and we keep tweaking and learning and adjusting. But I think definitely we have actionable things that we can keep repeating, and suggestions that we're going to keep adding in as booksellers let us know what works and what doesn't.
So hello again. Here we are with CJ Arthur, a bookseller from Sheboygan. Well, not from, but in currently Sheboygan. We're going to talk all about where they're from as well. But in the meantime, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
We're really happy you're here. Tell us a little bit about, I don't know, your relationship with with MIBA in general, and sort of how they have played a role in your bookseller life.
Well, this is my first time being at one of their events. Wordhaven is 3 years old now, and it's taken me a little while to sort of figure things out. I still feel like I'm trying to figure things out. It's my first brick and mortar business, and MIBA, I became a member, I think, right off the bat because we opened on Independent Bookshop Day in April of 2022. And they have this awesome map, which I'm sure you know about,
Yeah.
that has all of the indie bookshops in the Midwest, and they do these cute little illustrations of your bookshop, and so that's been really fun. And so to be able to, I wanted to be able to be on the map and get involved, and I feel like I'm still really learning a lot about what they can do. They're really good at communicating and letting us know sort of the best sellers in the Midwest and just stuff that's going on. But this is my first road trip experience. And last night I got to meet a bunch of booksellers, and I've met a few along the way the last 3 years, but this is the most I've met. And they're really fun to hang out with, and they speak your language. And there's such a range of the book selling experience. Definitely people that are in bigger cities have a lot more people come through and can have like staffs,
Right.
and I tried to have a staff for a while, but it's tricky. I mean, I have sort of a book team of volunteers right now that helps me out if like when I'm here or not feeling well or whatever, but it's pretty tricky to have a staff and pay yourself. It is, you don't, turns out you don't go into indie, book selling to make a lot of money. But I come from, the world of education and nonprofits and social services. So, I'm not really used to making that much anyway, but definitely this is quite a bit less than anything I've done. But you do it for the love of books. And, Sheboygan is considered to be in a book desert. The Little Free Library sort of taught me about a lot of that stuff. We partner with them too, and we have a little free library. And so just, partnering with folks, and MIBA does such a great job of connecting us. And I feel like this is in some ways just the start of like my next level with them, and learning about what they do and what they're about and how we can connect and how I can help them. And
Yeah.
so it was a very long-winded answer.
No, that's okay. Trade associations are really powerful. I mean, having community with other people is how we learn.
Mhm.
I wonder if you would maybe tell our viewers a little bit about your bookstore and kind of what made you wanna, what is it that is sort of your mission with the bookstore?
I should have asked consent before I touched your arm. There was a bug. I was going to get you. Wordhaven Bookhouse is a writing center and bookshop in Sheboygan, and I am originally from Minnesota. You can hear the O, right? Do you have the O too?
Oh, I
By
totally
the way,
do.
folks, we're going to talk a little more about that. coming up.
Minnesota.
Ken and I are
Uh,
both from Minnesota.
Yeah.
I've also lived in Northampton, Massachusetts, and Iowa City and Seattle. And then I ended up back in the cities for about another 18 years or so, and just needed a change in location, a change in experience. I had had some adventures that taught me a lot, but I needed to sort of, what I thought what I needed was a retreat. And Sheboygan has always been sort of a place for me to do that. I discovered it like 26 years ago, and I would get back there when I needed to sort of connect with myself, which is probably what I needed more than the retreat, was to connect with myself, connect with my higher self. And, I call her Lady M, Lake Michigan,
Oh, nice.
is a portal of sorts, and helps you connect to, depending on your spiritual beliefs, but like you can connect to your guides easier. You can also, whatever, if you send sort of positive energy, it can go out through the lake. And so Lady M was calling me. And so I listened to the call. I moved there. I didn't know anyone. I bought a house. Someone FaceTimed it for me.
Wow.
And
That's
I
great.
was committed. I was like, I'm doing this. And I was working somewhere else that ended up not being a good match. And there wasn't an indie bookshop. And I wanted to live in a town with an indie bookshop. And as an English teacher and as a writer and as an author, I really wanted there to be a writing center too, because I think it's reading about characters and experiences, but it's also processing that and connecting it to yourself and others. And I find that writing is sort of a great way to do that. But also want to create a space where people could talk about what they read, talk about what's going on in the world, and just be a safe place to heal and grow and connect and learn, and that's what I've been trying to do. So we have a bunch of events. We have tarot club and book clubs and writing classes and author events and drag story time, and now we've just started doing night markets, and we have a book of the month club where people can participate in our book clubs, and we'll ship it to you wherever you are. And if you want, you can, FaceTime in, or if you don't, you just want to, have the book that whatever we pick. So we have that going on. I just started a Patreon because we do have a lot of free events. And so that helps us be able to provide those opportunities for the community. We have like a scholarship fund so people can take writing classes, even if they don't have the funds. I want them to still be able to take the classes.
Wonderful.
And so I'm just trying to do my best and learn as I go. And
You're much more than a bookstore. Just listening at what you're trying to do there, but can we get into the nuts and bolts a little bit of the bookstore itself? So how do you define wins? Like what's a good win for you to go home at the end of the day and say, yeah, what a great day? And conversely, what are some of the biggest challenges you keep running across in running your bookstore?
I sort of like to think about the language of thriving and opportunities of growth. I try to steer away from sort of like success or winning. I think we're a bookshop rooted in equity, and so for me, if I have helped someone make a connection, if I've helped them maybe process something that will help them thrive, I think that our unresolved trauma can often come out sideways and harm other people or harm ourselves. I think especially right now with the political landscape, it feels like we're all in this sort of abusive household together. And I think that doing our work and making sure our stuff doesn't come out sideways on our siblings feels really, really important to me, because it's dying. Like it's like a caged animal. The current system is going to go away eventually, and we need to be ready, and we need to be our best selves so that we can just create ideally a world that is more rooted in equity. And so for me, like we had an author event on Saturday. We had two author events back to back, and one of them was one of my friends from Minnesota, and he wrote a Saturday mornings at the shop, and it was about his experiences going to the barber shop as a kid. And he was actually in CBS Mornings, and I met him on the Governor Advisory Council in I think 2020. But he drove from Minnesota and was able to share his book and talk about his experience. And then we had Dasha Kelly Hamilton, who used to be a Wisconsin Poet Laureate, and she came, and some of the other writers came with her, and they talked about this new book they have called Alignment, which is a poetry book where they would have like prompts, and people across the state of Wisconsin would sort of respond, and then she'd combine things. It included folks that were incarcerated, and someone who was incarcerated called while she was giving the presentation. And with his permission, we got to hear about his experience of being a writer and how that's impacted him. And so just I just feel really excited that I can help connect people, and that they can learn about all the cool stuff that people are doing to make this world more equitable and kind. And so to me, that feels like that Word Haven is doing something good for the world, with opportunities like that. But even Tarot Club, like anytime you can heal and become a healthier version of yourself and connect with others, to me, I feel like that's what's gonna help.
That
us.
spreads out and changes the world
I
a
hope
little bit
so.
by bit.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Okay, so then we have to land on the most controversial topic of our times, right? Duck, duck, gray duck. Duck, duck, gray duck.
You mean
this is official.
You mean the only correct way to play
The
the game?
only
This
correct
is
way.
official
Yes.
confirmation that is how it should be done. It is not duck, duck, goose.
No.
Duck, duck, gray duck. And
That's
it's on a T-shirt that makes it
People
real.
get
so
confused.
They do.
I know.
Yeah.
And I really want to honor your efforts to make sure people are clear
Thank
and
you.
they have clarity around that. So
Mhm.
kudos to you. You really are making the world a better place. We're gonna do duck, duck, gray duck, one state at a time.
When I was so I'm a Minnesota State Teacher of the Year, and we get to meet other Teachers of the Year from other places that are connected to the U.S. and you're supposed to bring something from your state to sort of represent your state, and I got little gray ducks
Oh, fun.
and gave them.
Perfect.
And a lot of people didn't even know that was a thing. And so one of my proudest moments, I think, was that some of my friends like taught Duck Duck Grey Duck to their students,
Oh, fun.
and I'm like, my work here is
Your
done.
work is
So did they just never hear of Duck Duck Grey Duck, or did they think it was Duck
No.
Duck Goose?
Well, they learned the wrong way.
They
They
learned the
didn't
wrong-
know about the right way, and so
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I enlightened a lot of teachers of the year
Yeah.
about Duck Duck
Spread
Grey
that.
Duck.
Yeah. I
The
always say
issue
it's-
of our times.
That's
really.
right.
Yeah.
It's a movement. It's a movement,
I
folks.
always say it's more creative. You know, you got to come up with all your patterns and your colors. It's more creative our way.
It
So
is.
it works
Yeah,
well
you
with
have to listen
writing and
Yeah.
really well because it could be green and
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. And the rhythm. Duck, duck, Grey Duck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Duck, duck, goose doesn't have the same level of
Yeah.
rhythm.
I know. All the Wisconsinites right now just turned off.
I
the
know.
podcast.
Yeah.
We've
They're
convinced
like,
you all.
they're like, we have
Convinced you.
nothing to learn from you.
Our viewership just dropped down to nothing. Oh well, it's a worthy sacrifice to make the world a better place.
It's worth it.
All right, well, CJ Author, I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us today. And good
Yeah.
luck with Word Haven
Thank you.
and everything going forward.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We have Broca, Fabian,
Fabian.
lovely. And she is the founder of River Dog Book Company. Tell us a little bit, maybe start with a little bit of your history in the industry.
So I first started in book selling 20 years ago. I was very lucky that right out of college, I got a job at a place called the Odyssey Bookshop in Western Massachusetts. And I had started working at the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art when I was in school. And so I got an undergraduate degree in literature. I got a master's degree in children's literature. And my life was very clearly going to be devoted to books in one way or another. And so I have had the pleasure of working for 5 different independent bookstores. Started at the Odyssey, moved over to Annie Bloom's Books in Oregon. I worked at Briar Patch Books in Maine. I worked at Quail Ridge Books in North Carolina.
Wow,
And then I opened my own.
that's fantastic. That is a lot of experience.
Back up 1 second. You went
Yes.
from Massachusetts to Oregon?
I did go
for
from
bookstores?
Massachusetts to
Wow,
Oregon.
talk about spanning the
Yeah.
country and then back to the East Coast for the others. Wow.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. What, I guess I'm curious,
Yeah.
what drew you to Oregon?
A couple of things. I graduated with a master's degree from Simmons College in Boston, and there weren't a ton of jobs in publishing at the time. That they were really New York centric. I was really lucky to get a job at Beacon Press for about 18 months. I was there, and then I helped open the world's first Curious George store in Cambridge, which is no longer there. I should have mentioned it, but I was their first general manager.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That is.
But after a few years in Boston, I really felt like I was hitting my head against the wall of the book scene. It wasn't doing what I wanted to do for my life and my career. And Oregon had always seemed like the place that had a lot of what I loved to do. I loved to be outside. I loved to do literary things. I loved to be part of an artist sort of community and get that feeling. And it just felt like the pace there was a little slower than Boston. So I moved to Oregon. I didn't know anyone. I met up with friends of, someone my father knew, and just kind of got connected that way. And I was there for 3 wonderful years. And I literally walked into Annie Bloom's and just said, "Hi, I used to be a bookseller. I'd love to be one again. Here's my resume." That was a time when you brought around resumes.
Yeah.
And they hired me.
Wow, talk about jumping without a chute. Good for you. That's pretty brave.
Thank you.
Pack her up and head west.
Yeah.
A lot of my life has been like that. And so far, knock on wood, it's worked out.
I mean, you rarely go wrong when you're brave.
That is true. I agree.
And so what led you to deciding to open your own store?
Absolutely. So I skipped over the part where I moved to New Zealand, also not knowing anyone.
Nice.
Yes. So did that, met my wife, who was working in Australia. I was living in New Zealand. Through a series of events, we ended up in North Carolina, where she was finishing a PhD. And we knew that we weren't going to stay there long term. I had the pleasure to work at Quail Ridge Books during that time, but we knew what was coming, which was a move somewhere for both of us. 2 adult humans, 5 degrees, so much debt between the 2 of us trying to make life together. What does that look like? And so I said, well, it's now or never. I've always wanted to have my own store. And I knew what it took to do a store. So why don't I start one that's a pop-up? and I can do the things I want to do, have events, meet people out in the community. I can do online things before online was really a thing. Let me start that way. And then we can move wherever and I can take that business with me.
Yeah.
So I started in North Carolina. We moved actually to Wisconsin first because Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, the mayor put out a call for a bookstore to come to town.
Oh, interesting.
Really?
This is
cool.
you can find it online. They were doing an economic revitalization plan. And I did go. I visited Beaver Dam. I was taken around town. I was shown some plans. And we made the move in October 2018. And I spent 18 months figuring out how not to invite a bookstore to come to your community. No offense, Beaver Dam, but I learned a lot about the dreams people have and then the reality of the finances behind those dreams. And so they are still working on their economic revitalization plan, believe it or not. But it wasn't working for us as a couple and it wasn't working for the business. And so, I did learn a lot. I had boutique locations in 3 different stores. I did pop-ups once a month. I still worked almost full time during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much about what it was going to take financially and devotionally, time-wise, in a way that when you're not owning a store, you don't quite know all those ins and outs, even as much as you might think you do.
Yeah.
So then we moved to Oregon, where I thought, let me pair my bookstore dreams of a mobile bookstore, a pop-up bookstore. Portland has an incredible business community for, mobile. So it was the second time that I was going to live there, and we moved there in January of 2020. Remember what happened in March? And so, in another life, I worked in politics. And so I was a communications director of a homeless services bill that we were working to pass in Oregon while trying to get my bookstore off the ground.
Oh my.
Yeah. Pause for trucks.
Pause for trucks.
So then COVID happened. The city shut down. The Black Lives Matter protests were happening right outside my office, which was unfortunately firebombed, not because of the office, but because that's where the clashes were happening.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like Portland wasn't the place that this was all going to come together.
Yeah.
And then our landlord sold our house out from under us.
Oh my.
So, yep. By August of 2020, we were back in the truck, actually, with about 25 plants, 2 dogs, and 2 bikes, and headed back to Wisconsin, where my wife is from. We moved in with my in-laws for 18 months. That happened. And we then, after 18 months, purchased my wife's great-great-grandparents' home, which hadn't been in the family in 30 years. And the only way we could have done it is because my in-laws took us in during the pandemic. And we both worked an incredible amount.
Just saved money.
Saved money, paid down debt, and got a deposit. And now we have our home. And so I now have River Dog Book Company that I still do on the side. We have a wonderful bookstore in town. It's in Oconomowoc, Books and Company. And I in no way want to step on their toes. We know each other well. But there's so much room to be doing other things in that area. It's a very literary place, Wisconsin. And so I'm still figuring out the best way to enter the community, especially as a store that's always been focused on diverse and representative literature, inclusive, all geographically diverse as well, because that's my background. I immigrated to this country. My family immigrated to this country. My family immigrated like the last 3 or 4 generations.
And you've lived in more places in this country than most Americans.
Yeah. So that was all really important to me. But I do live in the most conservative county in Wisconsin as an immigrant Jewish queer woman in a same-sex relationship. I'm what everyone's afraid of. And so how do you enter a community in Wisconsin that is really lovely, really caring and giving? Our neighbors are amazing. We've made wonderful community there. But then I'm going to be selling a whole lot of banned books. I'm going to be selling a whole lot of things that people might think ideologically that they're against until they get to know a little bit more about it and a little bit more about me. And so I want to make sure that we're safe in our community as well. So I haven't quite entered as fully into the community as I would have liked otherwise, because I'm still trying to figure those things out. But there's a robust world out there online, and so I do a lot of that.
Well, it sounds like you're approaching it in a smart way, right? Kind of
Trying
just,
to.
sliding in, getting the lay of the land, and understanding it first.
Exactly.
And just a quick preview for listeners out there, we are actually interviewing Books and Company
Wonderful!
in the next couple of episodes coming up. I think maybe
I'm
in a
so
couple of
happy
weeks
to
we'll be
hear that.
talking, I don't remember her name offhand, but we'll be
Lisa,
talking.
perhaps?
I think so. Yes. So stay tuned for that. So let's talk a little bit then about River Dog, or just maybe just the ins and outs.
Absolutely.
of being a independent bookstore owner.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's pop-up or physical, a lot of the
Yes.
same things happen, right?
Very
The
much
same
so.
events, the same challenges, the same wins. So
Yes.
talk us through some of the pros, the cons, what you
Oh.
love, and what just kind of makes you lay awake at night and go,
Taxes. I'm not going to lie. The business part of owning a business is
Yeah.
the scariest thing. It's the most opaque thing. And it's not the profit piece. There's profit, there's loss. You want to buy less inventory and sell more to make money. That's a pretty basic figure, equation. But okay, I have to pay quarterly taxes to the state. I have to pay, income taxes in certain ways. If you're a sole proprietor, that like the business part of it, that's the thing that keeps you up at night for me anyway.
Yeah.
And I try really hard to be very conscientious about it. And then I inevitably miss a deadline that I didn't, know was there and have to call somebody and they're very nice and figure it out. And it's those types of things that add that additional level of stress to everything that you're doing. But the really fun parts, I think, are buying your inventory, telling people about the books that you love, setting up events that you're passionate about. It's the same for every business that it's either you're putting books out into the world that you know and love. So you're a niche business or you're a business that focuses on a certain genre in some way, whether it's children's or romance or fantasy, whatever you want to do, queer books. You're either building that community yourself or you're entering into a community and letting the community tell you what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beauties of having a place like Books and Company. They're a general bookstore.
Right.
They're serving their community widely.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to serve also a wide community, perhaps a smaller population looking for some other types of representation.
Well, in the common parlance, Books and Company's got the 80%.
Yes.
Right? And you're working the 20%
Exactly.
on the edges that probably doesn't get addressed by your more commercial bookstores.
Absolutely. And not to say, I will say Books and Company is an incredibly welcoming place.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to do in our
Yeah.
county. So I give them a lot of credit for that. That's awesome.
Well, and you're talking about taxes and the challenge there. It's very analogous, I think, to an author who they write their book.
Yes.
And then they realize that there's the whole marketing piece.
Absolutely.
Which is just as opaque. There's
Oh
not
my
just
gosh.
this one blueprint that you follow.
No.
Nobody tells you really how to do it. And it's a different skill set that a lot of authors either don't have or didn't realize they needed to develop.
Incredibly
And
so.
There's very much a tie-in with what you face there and what a lot of authors face. So very interesting.
Yes. And I will say that the cash flow piece of it is also a big learning curve.
Yeah.
Also for writers. I had a writer friend who got a 6-figure 3-book deal.
Nice.
Which sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Until you realize over the course of 4 years, that's $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's not enough to live on. And she's supposed to be writing and promoting and everything else at the same time.
Yep.
And it's a little bit like that in book selling that you think, okay, all of these great, amazing big books are coming out.
Yeah.
They're all coming out in the first 3 months of the year. No one wants to buy books the first 3 months of the year. Great. I've just spent a lot of money buying in new books that I'm very excited about, but I'm not going to be able to sell them until the second half of the year. How do you make your cash flow work? How are you making those decisions? Do you remember those books later? The organization that you have to have. We also don't talk about that a lot. How you organize your book selling life so that you remember in June what you looked at in January.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Although my brain is picturing a spreadsheet right now. You know that, Ken.
Yes. Luella's already got a spreadsheet whipped up in her head. But yeah, that does have to be, it's got the leg.
Yes.
Like the leg of the
Yeah.
selling, the leg of the buying,
Yes.
and just tying those two things
And
together.
what are your
Exactly.
customers going to be in the mood for by then?
Correct.
It might be completely different.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure
Crazy.
nobody told you, buy this book now, but you're going to have to sit on it for 8 months. And then you put it up for
Exactly.
sale, and that's when it's going to sell.
Well, and a
You
lot
have to
of
figure
people
it out.
don't understand that's the economics of book selling as well. And most of our invoicing, if we're lucky enough to have terms with publishers, is 30 days. Well, most books don't sell for 90 unless they're a new or best-selling title.
Right.
So if you've purchased 90% of the inventory that's on your shelf, because someone's going to come in and they say, well, I would like book 1 or book 3 of the 6-book series.
Yeah.
Those are books sitting there that you've already paid for. So the investment up front in a physical brick and mortar, or even to have, let's say, $10,000 worth of stock for a pop-up,
Mm-hmm.
that's $10,000 you've spent out.
Right.
And you're not necessarily getting it back.
We know you only get to pay back 1 book at a time.
Exactly.
Which, that
Yeah.
can be difficult. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about another side gig that you going on,
Yeah,
a podcast that you launched.
I do. It's
Tell us
so
about
kind
it.
of you. Thank you. It's called The Business of Book Selling.
Ooh,
And
brilliant.
Yeah,
Everything
right?
you just said.
We just got the shortened version right
Yeah.
here, folks.
100% true. Ooh, that'd be really like you.
Yeah.
I'm sweet. Yeah. I like that. I'm really, really passionate about making sure that all of the bookstores that are opening, because they're doing their passion as well, that it's not just a side project that they lose money on. I want them to have an understanding of some of the ins and outs that we don't necessarily talk about as an industry. And right now, there is no one-stop shop for getting all that information. So you can go to the American Booksellers Association, you can belong to your regional, like the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association. There have been what I like to call a lot of men writing manifestos about book selling.
Yeah.
They're great. They're my friends. Their books are wonderful, but they're not practical how-to guides.
Right.
And there are a lot of ins and outs in an industry that's a little opaque to an outsider. And so even if you have a business background or you have a marketing background or you've been a librarian or you just really love books, you don't necessarily know what Edelweiss is, which is an amazing platform that we use for book selling, for book buying and book selling. You don't necessarily know what indie commerce is, which is a type of online website that the customer can see to buy books. You don't know all of these ins and outs. You don't know what definitions of words are that are bandied around the industry. Where's your dictionary? So the whole idea is to have kind of a 101 series, and then we'll go from there. So there are 4 or 5 episodes out now. It is a side project, so I do it when I have some time. But I'm really trying to answer those 101 questions in one place.
That's such a great idea.
For the listeners, again, tell us the name of the podcast. So
The
we can find
Business
it.
of Bookselling, and it's on Apple, Spotify, and on the Business of Bookselling website, bizofbookselling.com.
Is a book B-I-Z.
B-I-Z,
Bookselling.
all for free.
All right. You're here, folks. Go check it out.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you so much for having
being
me.
with
Thanks for
us.
coming
It was
on.
great to interview you.
It was my pleasure.
All
Enjoy
right.
the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, we are back with CJ again because we have some breaking news, which is
CJ, why don't you tell us the honor that you just received?
The honor that I just received, which is still a little bit of a surprise, to be honest, is the Midwest Independent Bookseller Association has named me the Bookseller of the Year in the Midwest.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's like there's like 8 states in the Midwest map, and it just there's so many good booksellers that it is really an honor to be amongst them, but also just sort of a pretty big shock for me, to be honest.
Well, I think, I mean, your bookstore's been around roughly 3 years.
Mhm.
So to get it 3 years in, that has to say something about you, about what you're trying to do. Do you know what some of the judging criteria was?
It's on their website. I think that they are looking for folks who are trying to create sort of safe spaces in the community and, interact with the community and just maybe trying to, like, it's not really about necessarily like how much money you make or, that.
Right.
It's like, what are you actively doing to try to maybe create change or create opportunities, or I'm sure it's worded so much better on their
Right.
on their website. But I was able to see, one of the people that nominated me, like what they wrote, and they wrote about how we're a queer-owned indie bookshop in a small town in Wisconsin,
Right.
and last year about this time we had picketers, we've gotten death threats, hate messages. A lot of people have tried to sort of indicate that they're not real happy that we're there. There's a lot of people who are really happy that we're there, but you have to navigate a lot of hate. But sometimes when white supremacists aren't happy with what you're doing, then it means you're on the right track. So
Amen to
that's
that.
what I try to remind myself. And so I think the person who nominated me wanted to just speak to the opportunities that we provide, even though we're getting a lot of sort of pushback and hate from some people. But there's just like, there's been so many people that show up for us and are so supportive and loving and kind, and there's just no way that we would have even made it to our 3rd birthday without all of the support.
Right.
And I have a lot of support beyond too, because I have a lot of Minnesota people, and with my Teacher of the Year stuff, I have people sort of all over the place, and they have been, there's so much love and support, and that has been remarkable, honestly.
I think one of the reasons that sort of that nastiness is so loud is because there's not very many of them, honestly, and they have to be loud.
Yeah.
There's a lot
There's
more kindness in the world. A lot
more
more.
than I would like, but yes,
Always, yes.
yeah,
It's kind of the
Yeah.
squeaky wheel syndrome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It just makes the most
Yeah.
noise, so you're attracted to that attention, but it can drown out the louder but more subtle
Yeah.
noise of the people that support you. So,
And when you are supporting identities and voices of folks that have been historically oppressed, people who need them to stay oppressed for their own power and control will try to stop you from doing that work. And so again, that means
That means you're
I
doing
think
it right.
I'm on the right track.
That's right.
Yeah, because they
Yeah.
definitely are trying to stop
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Well, congratulations. I
Thank
think it's really
you.
fantastic,
Congratulations
particularly
again.
like Ken said, your 3 birthday, like that's a pretty amazeballs
Yeah.
accolade to get
Thank
already.
you.
So
something you can book.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and I think
Congratulations.
having it makes me feel like they have my back.
yeah,
You know,
for sure.
and especially now at a time where I'm trans, non-binary, intrixic, and at a time where there's just so much extra. There's always hate, but there's like extra hate right now. And so to know that there's this organization in Wisconsin that is like, we got you, we see you, we're gonna help lift you up. Like that really is a huge gift that they're giving me.
That's wonderful.
All right.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Perfect. Well, congrats
Yeah.
again.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So we're at the end of the MIBA Spring Road Trip Conference. Been an interesting day for both Luella and I. Talked to a lot of people, learned a lot of new things. I mean, this is something that I'm not that familiar with. I've never been to one of these conferences. So I found a lot of it eye-opening. Luella, give me your thoughts. What was today like for you?
Well, I really think it's been an inspiring day. They have the group, the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association, has a theme basically for their event this today and tomorrow, which is about practicing hope. And so, maybe it's no surprise how inspiring some of these stories were, but pretty much everybody that we talked to had such a beautiful why.
Yeah.
They are trying to lift up members of their community regardless of how they define what that means. And I feel like we're in a time right now. It just feels to me like we are in a time where we have to lean on each other locally, and to come here and just see it, like everybody's saying the same thing, that they're looking for ways to help their community grow, and particularly with books and reading, which is
Yeah.
what we nerd out about.
Well, I found it interesting. Not a single person we talked to when we asked, why did you open the bookstore? It wasn't because I just wanted to sell books. There's always an overlaying reason. And a lot of what you said is, well, I wanted to create a space in my community, or I lived in a town that didn't have an independent bookstore, and I don't want to be in a town that doesn't have an independent bookstore.
Yeah.
So we
that
didn't
was
hear anything.
I heard
Yeah.
that from at least 2 people, and that always reminds me of when you hear people who are inspiring writers. They say, well, if you don't see the book that you want to read, write it, and it's
Yep.
sort of the same thing.
Yeah, if you don't have a bookstore, open it.
Yeah.
But nobody said, I want to open a bookstore and become rich.
Right.
Because I think they all recognize the realities of the difficulties of the literary world. But there was always some accompanying reason, underlying reason, aspirational reason for doing it, which I think is very impressive. I also like that, the majority of them could really speak in business level details too.
Yes.
So it's not, they didn't come in and say, oh, I want to change the world and I want to sell just books of hope, right? They came in and they had those aspirations, but they also recognized that, man, inventory, churning your inventory, balancing your inventory, your account receivables, things that just plague them.
Yeah.
They recognize the realities of the business as well. And so they kind of got their feet in both worlds.
Yeah, which is what you have to do, I think, in any industry, but particularly in an artistic related
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
It's hard. Those are 2 very different sides of your brain, and it's hard to sometimes tap into those. But man, we sure met a lot of brilliant people doing it today.
Yep, we did. I mean, even now, we're winding up day one, and they've got a representative from the Ho Chunk Nation in there, just kind of telling his story. You know,
Pause for truck.
loud truck.
Yeah.
Just telling his story. You know, recounting this the things that led him to this path. And it's funny because the dude was in Second City. He attended Second City
Kidding.
to write stand up.
Oh, fun.
And
Wow.
so
That's
his
a path.
delivery up there, very engaging,
Yeah.
right? Humorous, engaging. He speaks clearly. I mean, he's very comfortable in front of a crowd. And they picked a real good guy
Yeah.
to give the sessions that he's giving currently now.
Yeah.
So I think there was a good job done kind of selecting and curating, you know, the vendors that would be here, but also the presentations
Yeah, for sure.
that were given. So yeah, they should be proud of it.
Yeah, I agree.
We're not going to be here on day 2, right? We're here on day 1 to capture all our video, but you know, I'm sure we'll hear the results of day 2, you know, pass that on to everybody. But you know, in spite of everything else, I'll just say thanks for now watching the Midwest Writers Room. I'm Ken Humphrey.
And I'm Luella Schmidt. Do I have to say it?
Say it. You have to say it.
All right, let's see if I know it by heart. Words, something imaginations, and spark change. Never underestimate the power of storytelling. Yes, I do always read it.